I'd just like the front benches change over. I come to the urgent question. John Glen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To ask the Minister to make a statement on the reporting and acceptance of ministerial gifts and hospitality.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to update the House on action that the Government will take to enhance transparency around ministerial gifts and hospitality. Transparency is a critical part of restoring public faith in politics, and the Government recognises the changes are needed. Under the last Government, the rules for ministers declaring hospitality were less transparent than for other MPs. Lists of hospitality received by ministers were only published by Whitehall departments once a quarter and did not include the value. In contrast, MPs and shadow ministers' interests must be declared within 28 days and include the cost of the hospitality. Tory ministers used this loophole even when events appear to have had little connection to their government roles. Both the House of Commons Committee on Standards and the Committee on Standards in Public Life have called for this disparity to be removed. Under the last Government, Labour frontbenchers who went to events could end up sitting next to their Tory counterparts. Labour MPs had to declare details on their MP register, importantly including value, while Tory ministers did not on the equivalent ministerial process. The Government will correct this imbalance. The Tory freebies loophole will be closed. In the future, the Government will publish a register of ministers' gifts and hospitality on a broadly equivalent basis to that which is published in the registers of members' and lords' interests. This will bring publication of ministerial transparency data more closely in line with the parliamentary regime for gifts and hospitality. The Government intends that these arrangements should be in place as soon as possible and will set out further details in due course. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister intends shortly to issue and publish an updated version of the Ministerial Code in which he will set out his expectations for the conduct of all who serve in government as ministers. As well as confirming these new reporting arrangements, this will also include additional guidance to ministers on the principles they should apply when considering whether to accept gifts or offers of hospitality, as part of the Government's work to restore public faith in politics as a force for good.
Minister John Glen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Right Honourable Lady for her response. On the steps of Downing Street on the 5th of July, the Prime Minister pledged to put country first and party second. Now, Labour ministers have now been beset by a series of scandals involving freebies. The Prime Minister has claimed that this was all a perfectly sensible arrangement. Does the Right Honourable Lady still believe this? What gifts and hospitality can ministers now accept? Can Cabinet ministers continue to party in DJ booths in Ibiza? Will ministers be banned from taking junkets at the Oasis 25 tour? Or was it just Taylor Swift that was a handout too far? What role did Downing Street play in the VIP escort further to the free tickets for Taylor Swift from Universal Music? Have all the political staff in the Prime Minister's parliamentary office correctly declared their financial interests and hospitality? The new Chief of Staff's entry seems very empty. Have all ministerial donations in kind been declared at their full market value? Why do ministers refuse in PQs to say when the new ministerial transparency platform will go live? Isn't the sheer scale of the Prime Minister's beneficiary of others' largesse now a conflict of interest? Will the Right Honourable Lady confirm that the Prime Minister is taking a donation in kind of £100,000 a year from Arsenal Football Club, and will he now recuse himself from the Football Governance Bill? Amid scandals like cash for croissant, free gear Kia and passes for glasses, where is Labour's new Ethics and Integrity Commission? And what have Labour donors got in return for their generosity? What discussions did the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff have with the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, with Lord Ellie, on ministerial appointments and public appointments? Will ministers place in the library all the documents relating to Lord Alley's Operation Integrity? And finally, can the Minister without portfolio explain to this House why the millionaire Prime Minister can't clothe himself without gifts from others?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As I've already said to the right honourable gentleman in my first response, this government is committed to rebuilding trust in politics. The Prime Minister has commissioned a new set of principles on gifts and hospitality, which will be published shortly. This will outlaw the Tory freebie loophole because this government is committed to being more upfront and open than our predecessors. But we will take no lectures from the party opposite on gifts and hospitality, standards in public life or trust in politics. Let me tell the right honourable gentleman what shattered trust in politics: the behaviour of the Conservatives in their 14 years in power. Partying in Downing Street whilst the whole country sacrificed their freedom, handing lucrative COVID contracts to friends and donors, failing to expel MPs caught breaking the rules. That's the difference between this government and the last one. We are strengthening the rules. When Owen Paterson was found to have broken the rules, they tried to rip them up. And now the Conservatives want us to believe they care about trust in politics. Mr Speaker, this is utterly shameless. And of course, it was not just Tory sleaze and scandal that has eroded trust. Just as corrosive has been the complete and utter failure of the Conservative politicians to keep the promises they made to the British people. So now the work of change begins. It starts with rebuilding trust in our politics, as I've already set out today, and which we are committed to doing. And instead of the cynical and confected outrage that we've heard from the right honourable gentleman today, which is fooling no one, if the party opposite really wants to help repair the damage they caused to trust in politics, they would do well to back the changes we are making and say sorry for the sleaze and scandal that plagued their 14 years in power.
Clive Efford.
Mr Speaker, the sheer brass neck of the Conservatives turn up on a subject like this when they set up a VIP lane for contracts during COVID, when they've accepted so many gifts which they didn't have to declare. I think my right honourable friend is absolutely right to close that loophole. But can I just turn to the right honourable gentleman who's asking this question and point out that he refused to vote for the Privileges Committee report into Boris Johnson, who lied to this House. How is that improving standards in political life? What a performance.
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and he is right to point out the VIP lanes for COVID contracts and the fact that when those on the benches opposite had the opportunity to take a stand, instead, when Owen Paterson broke the rules, they voted to rip up those very rules.
Sir Olney, the Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I must say I am startled to see Conservative MPs acting as if they're defenders of standards in public life. Under the last government, ministers were subject to less transparency than backbench MPs. We will never know the interests of some ministers who served under Liz Truss because their ministerial interests were never published. But I would say to the new government, if ministers do not treat restoring standards with the urgency that it deserves, then there will be no sympathy for them from the public either. So to that end, I ask the Minister, as the independent adviser on ministerial interests has made clear, the current system produces a list of interests and not a full register. Will the Minister guarantee that we will now see a full register being published, just like for MPs, and on what timescales? Will the government rectify the fact that we went for months under the previous government without a list of interests being published by retrospectively publishing those interests? Will the government enshrine the ministerial code in law and include within it regular timescales for publishing a register of interests so that we can have confidence that it will be published? And finally, will the government make the role of the ethics adviser truly independent by empowering the adviser to begin their own investigations and publish their own reports?
The Honourable Member makes a number of important points, and in relation to value, yes, this is about aligning, closer alignment between the two schemes. MPs need to declare value. At the moment, value doesn't need to be declared in the Ministerial scheme, and that's the loophole that we are looking to close, and will do so as soon as possible.
Bill Coyle.
This Government's Ethics and Integrity Commission end the grotesque situation which arose under the endemic corruption of the Conservative government, which saw a relative of someone who extended lavish hospitality to disgraced former Prime Minister Boris Johnson put in the House of Lords against the advice of our security services?
My honourable friend will know that as well as these issues, we are also seeking to reform the House of Lords and the transparency of the appointment process.
Sir Gavin Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a lot of concern among constituents about how, for giving away free tickets, people seem to be, the government seems to be involved in compromising the operational independence of the police. I appreciate that the Minister can't set out what the Attorney-General's advice was, but can she explain to the House as to why the Attorney-General was asked to give advice and what question the Attorney-General was asked to answer?
Policing is an operational matter for the police, so not something that I can comment on directly.
Rachel Blake.
Does the Minister agree with me that if the opposition benches really wanted to make progress with standards in public life, they would be reflecting on their own record, the VIP lane, Partygate, their determination to lose by-elections over conduct of their own members of Parliament? And does she agree with me that we are making progress on this through our plans going forward?
I thank my honourable friend for those important points, and it is the Conservative Party that has led to that erosion in trust in politics. That is what we on these benches are now seeking to clear up.
Richard Holden.
Lovely, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. Thank you for the opposition members for their support for the government front bench today. I think the government's response has been totally tone deaf to the situation we've seen raised, not because of the government's transparency.
I don't need any help from you. Hand signals do not impress me in the slightest. Richard Holden.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Not because of the government's transparency, but actually because of the actions of our popular press. Just to pick up on the shadow front bench's remarks, in clarity of actual amounts of money which have been declared in the register, but seem to be at odds with a true market value, particularly around, for example, short-term leases of flats. Could the Minister provide some clarity as to how we can ensure that actually true figures are really represented in the register?
I'm not sure of the specifics that the points that the honourable member raises, but at the heart of what we have set out is to increase transparency in the reporting process. At the moment, there is disparity between what MPs declare and what ministers have to declare. The Tories did nothing to fix that in 14 years in government, and that is what we are now seeking to change.
Matt Weston.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for her statement on this. But I have to say, I must have missed a trick here, Mr. Speaker, because it seems like just a couple of years ago there was this sort of behaviour from the benches opposite on an industrial scale. We had the donation of £58,000 for the then Prime Minister Johnson's flat to turn it into some sort of crack den or whatever, or party central, and then he was offered £150,000 by the same person for a treehouse for his then son. So I would just ask the Minister, I welcome what she's saying, but does she agree with me that our approach and the principles that are being set up are totally different to what went before?
I thank my honourable friend for raising those points. As I said before, and will repeat, we want to make the rules more transparent. We've clearly set out how we intend to do that, so that we can have transparency around gifts and hospitality, which has been lacking for too long.
Dr. Caroline Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, government's guideline for the self-employed is very clear that you cannot claim for everyday clothing, even if you wear it for work. Yet we've heard that Cabinet Ministers declared clothing donations as a donation in kind for undertaking parliamentary duties, and further as to support the Shadow Chancellor's office. Does the Minister think that these were transparent donations or donations designed to deceive?
No member deceives the House.
No member sets out to deceive the Commons, and donations have been made in the right way. There's no suggestion that donations haven't been declared properly or transparently. What we are seeking to do is align the rules for ministers with those with MPs, but I don't think there's been any suggestion that declarations haven't been properly made.
Josh Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the newspapers are to be believed, there are several members of the rather sparsely populated benches opposite who are considering standing down if the government's reforms clamping down on second jobs are delivered. Exactly. Can the Minister confirm her commitment to delivering these reforms to restore standards in public life in spite of the sad possible loss of members opposite?
I thank my honourable friend for that question, and of course the issue of second jobs is something that I know the Modernisation Committee will be looking at incredibly closely.
Brendan O'Halloran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In June 2022, the now Deputy Prime Minister said, "Honesty matters, integrity matters and decency matters. We should be ambitious for high standards and we should all be accountable." Labour promised change, but the truth is they're not that different from the sleaze that went before. And what the public sees is the Labour Party saying, "It's our turn now." They're acting like peas in a pod. So can the Minister tell us why, having showered an assortment of gifts on the Prime Minister and other Cabinet colleagues, why was Lord Alley given a triple A pass to Downing Street? And could you tell us who requested that pass be given, and exactly what was that pass used for?
Hear, hear.
Well, I agree with those words of the Deputy Prime Minister, but what I don't accept is the suggestion of equivalence with the Conservative benches, where the former Prime Minister got fined for breaking lockdown rules when the people up and down the country were sticking to the rules, often with great personal sacrifice. Those in number 10 were partying and breaking the rules, and at the same time their friends and donors were given fast-track routes for their COVID contracts. So I do not accept the equivalence. Everything has been properly declared, and we want to make the rules around transparency even greater.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would the Minister be able to remind members of this House which Prime Minister it was who was rewarded with a holiday to Mystique? As members may remember, there was a lot of mystique about Mustique at the time. I'll give members opposite a hint. It wasn't a member on this side of the House.
I thank my honourable friend, and as I recall, it was the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson who benefited from that holiday to Mustique.
Dr Luke Evans.
Yeah. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister has said he's been transparent and broken no rules, followed all accordances. Yet he's paid £6,000 out of that £100,000 back. Could the Minister tell her why he's chosen to do that, which rules he was following, which guidance it means, and which other member of the Cabinet will also be paying back tickets?
Well, that's a personal matter for the Prime Minister, but we've made clear, and the Prime Minister has made clear, that we are going to make the rules around transparency more aligned with that of MPs, and also reform the code with a clear set of guidance in relation to the receipt of gifts and hospitality. In the meantime, the Prime Minister has paid back for a number of items whilst that new code is being finalised.
David Pinter-Dyshinsky.
Deputy Speaker, if brass neck was an Olympic sport, the party opposite would all be gold medalists. They presided over a carnival of corruption. Does the Minister agree with me that it was their partying in Downing Street, their contracts for their mates and their constant failure to deliver that undermine trust in government? Will she join me in calling on them to apologise for their years of mismanagement?
Yeah. Give them a job.
I thank my friend for that question. And of course, you know, they created and presided over this loophole in the rules. They broke the rules during lockdown and COVID. They gave fast-track passes for their friends and donors for COVID contracts. So we will not take lectures from them on this.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Does the Minister agree that the use of police outriders, whistles and sirens to facilitate the ferrying of the favoured few around capital cities characterises the capital cities of less enlightened realms and not, until this point, our own? And does she agree with me that the special escort group needs to be used sparingly and not to ferry entertainers around, regardless of the number of free tickets dispensed to senior members of the government?
As I said in a previous answer, that's an operational matter for the police and not something that I can comment on further.
Lewis Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the Prime Minister's first day in office, he prioritised meeting the independent adviser on ministerial standards. Does the Minister agree with me that stands in stark contrast to the approach of the previous government, which saw 2 resignations of independent advisers on ministerial standards, and that post sitting vacant for 6 months?
I thank my honourable friend for his comments, and the Prime Minister has made clear, both in those meetings and in what he has said, that cleaning up and restoring trust in politics is incredibly important. I know that the Modernisation Committee is looking at a number of measures. We have also set out how we intend the Ministerial Code of Conduct to strengthen things. And I think that's incredibly important, particularly in restoring trust that has been eroded so much these past 14 years.
Joshua Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. After years of Conservative sleaze and scandal, we need to reset MP and minister relationships with standards in public life. Therefore, will the Minister commit to enshrining the Ministerial Code into law?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his comments. There are no plans to do that at the current stage.
Alistair Strathern.
Deputy Speaker, I'm sure there'll be many members in this House who share my and my constituents' disbelief at reports in the Times today that as many as 1 in 10 Conservative members are continuing standing down early because of closed down loopholes on second jobs. Now, regardless of political affiliation, one of our most important responsibilities is making sure we build and maintain our constituents' trust in politics. So whether it's tightening up laws on second jobs or making sure we clamp down on some of the loopholes around declarations that existed in the last government for ministers, will this government remain resolute in ensuring that when we come to this House we do so to serve our constituents, not ourselves?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. And as I said in answer to a previous question, the Modernisation Committee are looking at this very closely. Being a Member of Parliament is a huge privilege and an honour. It is a full-time job and then some on top of that. And it is important, that we look very closely about the appropriateness of second jobs for Members of Parliament.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Why has the Prime Minister paid back some gifts that he has received since he became Prime Minister, but not those he received as Leader of the Opposition? Is there a different standard between government ministers and the opposition?
I refer the honourable gentleman to a previous answer that I just gave.
Sean Davies.
This is another example of this Labour government having to clear up the mess of the members opposite. Members opposite who voted against suspending Owen Patterson from this House when wrongdoing was demonstrated. And also, Madam Deputy Speaker, does the Minister agree with me that both candidates for the leadership of the Conservative Party should declare their full hospitality over the last 12 months or more?
Thank my honourable friend for his contribution and that very interesting suggestion. And it's right that we look at all of those things. And he referred to Owen Patterson. We also, after that, it felt like lessons hadn't been learnt because soon after that, Scott Benton had to stand down from Parliament for breaching lobbying rules as well. So it does seem like there was somewhat of a pattern.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister not agree, though, that this is not just about transparency, it's about hypocrisy? And when my constituents are going, because of the Labour's scrapping of the winter fuel payments, are going to have to choose between heating their homes and clothing themselves, they can see the hypocrisy that the Prime Minister is getting tens of thousands of pounds for clothing and glasses. And when they have to decide whether to send their children to an independent SEND school because the party opposite are going to cut or add VAT to their school fees, while the Prime Minister can rent out tens of thousands of pounds flats for his children, they smell hypocrisy. When is the Prime Minister going to come and apologise for that? And when is he going to return all of that money?
Let me say something about hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is when people in Downing Street, including the former Prime Minister, were partying during lockdown, when my constituents and people up and down the country were making the greatest sacrifices, fathers not being at the birth of their children, people not being able to say goodbye to their loved ones. So I won't take lectures in hypocrisy from those on the benches opposite.
4,000 pensions are going to die.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that it's shameful that the party opposite let the role of Prime Minister's UK anti-corruption champion vacant for 2 years?
I thank my honourable friend for that comment, but is it any wonder when these are the sorts of things that went on under the last 14 years? The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson having to apologise to the Commons for failing to declare more than £50,000 in outside income. That 15,000 trip to a luxury villa in Mystique. No wonder they couldn't keep their ethics advisers in place when this sort of behaviour was going on at the heart of government.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Right Honourable Lady for her answers to the questions? And Madam Deputy Speaker, there is, I believe, a duty on us all, members and ministers, to ensure that there is transparency into gifts received. So does the Right Honourable Lady agree with me that more work needs to be done to clarify the rules around the declaration of hospitality and gifts to ensure that there are equal and fair rules for all, regardless of parliamentary status in this House? Thank you.
I thank the honourable member for his helpful contribution, and that is exactly what we are seeking to do through these changes.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the conversion of the Conservative Party to transparency and ethics? Because whether it was wallpaper or weddings or Pincher, Patterson or Benton, they were sadly silent when it was one of their own they thought should get away with things. So could I suggest to my honourable friend that she should retrospectively apply these new rules to the last 12 months so that every serving member who was a minister now has to declare every piece of hospitality and gift they had as ministers, so we can see exactly what their own record was compared to our cleanliness.
I thank my honourable friend for his contribution and observations. It is certainly something that I can take back to be looked at.
Andrew Lewing.
Thank you,
Deputy Speaker, I listened with interest to the Shadow Minister talk about integrity in politics, and my mind went back to a defining image from the last Parliament. April 2021, Her late Majesty saying goodbye to the Duke of Edinburgh, as she always did, abiding by every single rule. And we found out later, didn't we, that that night, that previous night, there had been parties going on in Downing Street. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that there is absolutely no comparison between this government that is clearing up the mess and the one that went before us?
I thank my honourable friend for his really important comments, and I don't think that the public will forget that image of the Queen sitting on her own and the idea that there is any equivalence between the rule breaking during COVID, the fast track for VIPs, and us now trying to sort things out with making the process more transparent is frankly indefensible from those on the benches opposite.
Joe Powell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Shadow Minister for the Cabinet Office may remember that he failed personally to support the suspension of Owen Paterson after he was found guilty of lobbying, being paid thousands of pounds to raise questions in Parliament. So does the Minister agree with me that this conversion today to standards and integrity rings completely hollow?
I thank my honourable friend for that contribution, and I had a look recently at the voting record of MPs on the benches opposite for that vote to rip up the rules on standards, in effect to get Owen Paterson off the hook, and overwhelmingly the front bench of those opposite voted to rip up the rules on standards.
I'll just give some time for, in fact, there you go.
Thank you. Later today, we're going to be debating a bill to protect our entertainment event from terrorism. This is obviously in the aftermath of the terrible terrorist attack on an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. And in more recent months, we've seen Taylor Swift have to cancel a concert owing to risk to her life and concert goers. Does the Minister agree with me that it's important that when we debate this bill later, we should take the politics out of our debate, we should recognise the real risk to life, and we should proceed with due caution and to properly talk about the loss of life in Manchester and aim to avoid any future loss of life at entertainment events?
I thank my honourable friend for that incredibly important point, and I hope that when that debate takes place later today, that debate to introduce Martin's Law onto the statute book that victims of that awful Manchester Arena terror attack have campaigned long and hard for. I hope that it will be debated in the tone and in the spirit that the honourable member has set out in his contribution.
And I will just give the front benches a little bit of time to swap over. Call Andrew Rossendale, Shadow Minister.